Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the open finals of Chai Latte, the India quiz from Nexus Consulting. We had a preliminary round on the 1st of November, which saw 200 contestants from the length and breadth of India attempt the quiz. And after a hard-fought prelim, we had shortlisted the top 9 in the open category because it was very, very close at 10th position. As it so happened, 2 of our top 9 could not make it today. A shout out to them, Aditya Das and Vinod Hariharan. Both of whom finished in the top 9 but could not make it today. So we have given one more person the next slot, which is Sachin Deshpande. So we have 8 contestants in our open final here today. We will go ahead and meet them. But before that, this quiz is researched and brought to you by Nexus Consulting, based in Bangalore. We are a knowledge and content company. Here we go with some details of the quiz. We'd like to thank one of our sponsors. She is a close friend of Nexus. She chooses to be not named, but she's a quiz enthusiast. She's currently in the Netherlands, and she really wanted to get involved with some of our quizzes. So she's given the cash, which is funding the prizes for both the school category and the open category. So thank you very much. You know who you are. Thank you for supporting us and supporting the cause of quizzing in India. All right, so here are the prizes, 6,000 worth prizes. We have 2,000 to the winner, 1,500 to the runner-up, 1,000 to the second runner-up. 4th place gets 500. I've finished 4th in many quizzes and ended up not getting any prize money. So we thought we'll do differential prizes for 4th place. It says 5th to 9th there, but since there are only 8 people, it's 5th to 8th and you get 250 each, right? So, 2,000, 1,500, 1,500 and 250 into 4, making up 6,000 in all. Right. And a couple of announcements for those on the quiz as well as those seeing the video. We have a home learning, general knowledge, general awareness program for school children called Quest. It has modules for students from grades 1 to 9 and has rich content that helps students think outside the conventional syllabus and explore new areas of interest in learning, peppered with a lot of quizzes as well as with a monthly update newsletter. It's now available in international markets as well. We have a special program at a convenient time slot for our customers in US and Europe. So please do look up. We have a separate website for Quest, quest.consultnexus.in. Please do look that up or write into quizclub@consultnexus.in as well. And we'll be able to help you with special programs. We have both Quest, which is a self-learning program, as well as Quiz Club, which is an interactive learning program that we offer to our India and international customers. We also run a YouTube channel where there is a show called The Road Less Taken, where I am in conversation with people who made unconventional career choices and succeeded at them. And there are episodes that drop at periodic intervals. Season 1 had 10 episodes with personalities like Pallela Gopichand, Amish Tripathi, and Vishwanathan Anand. Season 2 has had 4 episodes so far with the likes of Joy Bhattacharya, Major Chandrakant Nair, Deepta Kirti Chaudhary, and Wing Commander Sneha Sharma. There will be more episodes coming up. Please watch the channel. Like last year, we are launching a fun-filled trivia calendar this year as well for 2021. Pre-orders are available right now. If interested, please look up our website or write into us. The calendar has 12 carefully chosen works of art, on each page, as well as several interesting tidbits corresponding to various months and dates. So it can be a great gift that you can give to anyone. Okay. Here we go. Let's meet the finalists first. Contestant number 1 in today's quiz is Anindita Basuroy.
Hi, I'm Anandita and I'm right now in Noida. Yeah, I'm a quizzing enthusiast since like last 17 odd years. That's what I can say. I mean, I'm still learning. I'm a learner. So yeah, here to have fun. That's my aim today.
Thank you. Thank you, Anindita. Anindita from Noida is contestant number 1. In alphabetical order, number 2 is Jayakantan from Chennai.
Hey, Jayakantan.
Hi, Jayakantan. Jayakantan from Chennai is contestant number 2. Contestant number 3 is Karthik.
Yeah, hi. I'm Karthik from Bangalore.
Karthik from Bangalore. So we have Noida, Chennai, and Bangalore. Welcome, Karthik. Number 4 is Preetham.
Hello, I'm Preetham from Bangalore.
Okay, Preetham from Bangalore with half a foot in Mumbai right now. That's Preetham at number 4. At number 5, we begin the MI Paltan, so to say. Okay, contestant number 5.
Hi, I'm Prithvish. I'm currently based out of Mumbai.
Prithvish from Mumbai, also known as Boss. Contestant number 6 is Sachin Deshpande.
I'm Sachin. I'm currently based out of Mysore.
Mysore, okay. So that's the third Karnataka representation we have here. We have Bangalore, Mangalore and Mysuru. Very good. Welcome, Sachin. Contestant number 7 is Venkat Raghavan Sastanavan, also known as Ingit. Please say hi and introduce yourself.
My wife just dropped in, so I had to mute. Hi, this is Venkat, and I'm based out of Bombay.
Okay. Venkat from Bombay. And contestant number 8, Vibhendu Tiwari is contestant number 8. Welcome. First question to Anindita. Here we go. And of course, part points, I will, as per our normal rules, I will not mention whether a part has been answered or not till the full answer comes through.
Size to be.
Okay. Simple one to start with. When Murugan died in Amsterdam in 2003, it was an end to a remarkable chapter in Indian diplomacy. In the first decade and a half after independence, India sent numerous individuals like Murugans to dozens of countries. Although today they're less remembered than a similar exercise that China does, it was extremely popular. Several children would even write directly to Jawaharlal Nehru, hoping to get this done for their countries. What is this that we're talking about? And what is the Chinese equivalent of this?
I think I will pass it on.
Don't pass it on. Make a guess. There are no negative. Just make some
I have
guess.
nothing in mind. I'm totally blank right now.
Okay, sure. All right, I'll pass you on to JK.
Okay, I guess this is the sending animals as a form of soft diplomacy.
Okay.
The Chinese equivalent is they send off pandas to various zoos and everything.
Okay.
I'm guessing
And what-
Murugan is an elephant.
Elephant. That's the right answer. Perfect. Elephants, using animals as diplomacy, as JK said. And India was doing elephant diplomacy long before China started doing panda diplomacy. Nehru used to do this, and this was quite the popular thing in many countries. China, of course, famously, since the giant panda kind of is endemic to China, they send out pandas to zoos in other countries as panda diplomacy. Good answer, JK, 10 points. Question now to Karthik. Karthik, there's a mistaken belief that this measure comes from the width of the Roman chariot wheel. In India, there's a story that it originated after an experiment where British made 3 Indians sit side by side. In the 1850s, when it was to be implemented, the British wanted something broader. Company directors, unnecessarily worried about Indian weather, insisted on broader measures. This resulted in varying problem that is only still being cleared up. What are we talking about? And what is the still existing legacy of all this confusion and worry?
Yeah, so this is we are talking about the width of the railway tracks, and I think this is the 3 different gauges in India, typically your meter gauge, broad gauge, and the narrow gauge.
Perfect answer, Karthik. Well done. We are talking about the width of the railway gauges, and this is India having narrow gauge, meter gauge, and broad gauge in various parts of the country, and the railway is still trying to unify the same. Great answer, cracked in a jiffy by Karthik. Question moves to Preetham. Far from being religious fanatics, the people in the subcontinental movement were anti-imperialists, opposed to the Allies' scramble for Ottoman territory. They were amply satisfied by the establishment of a secular Turkish republic. One individual from that era became a household name in India and was celebrated as an anti-imperialist hero. Qazi Nazrul Islam admiringly exclaimed in a poem, "Blank tune blank kiya bhai." What movement is this? And fill in the blanks. The 2 blanks are not the same word, but are very similar. Questions with Preetham on table number 4.
I'll say part 1 is the Khilafat movement.
Okay.
Fill in the blanks. I'll say this is Lala Lajpat Rai.
Lala Lajpat Rai. Okay. Passing you to Prithvish.
So you're conserving points.
No, I'm not conserving points.
Second part is Kamal, तूने कमाल किया है भाई, Kamal Ataturk.
Okay.
Uh,
And the first part?
I'll say Khilafat movement.
That's the right answer. Why so much hesitation? That is correct. Khilafat movement, and like he said, perfectly referring to Kemal Ataturk, he said Kemal tune Kamal kiya bhai. So well done. 5 to Preetham and fully cracked by Prithvish for a full 10. Question now to talent Sachin Deshpande. Rajkumar Santoshi made Lajja in 2001. It's a take on male chauvinism, the struggles women go through, and so on. The film sent a message through the names of the 4 main women characters. One of the women was named Vaidehi. What is the connection among the names? Specifically, what does Vaidehi mean? So the 4 main women characters, all of their names had a kind of connection. What was the connection? Given that one of the 4 names was Vaidehi, and what does Vaidehi mean? Remember that the movie was a kind of very heavy on the women and women's empowerment kind of messaging.
Okay. So, no idea. I'm guessing that because you're saying it's the struggles against women go through the movie is about. So the names were all the problems that a woman would face. So basically guessing that Vaidehi is meaning someone who was widowed.
Okay.
And similarly, he had names for other people saying
Okay.
child marriage and say probably
Common problems they would face, and you're saying Vaidehi means widowed.
Yeah.
Okay. I will pass you on that to Ingit.
See, the connection among the names is all those. The women were all from myths, basically, from Hindu mythology. Women who were kind of oppressed or whatever in some form or the other. Okay.
Okay.
Vaidehi is a name for Sita,
Hmm.
and it probably means the patient one.
The patient one. Okay. Passing you on to Vivendu.
So I believe all the protagonists were names of Sita, like they were called Janki, Vaidehi, and probably Sita, Sia.
Okay.
Those kind of variations of names of Sita.
Okay.
Vaidehi means daughter of Videha, because Janak was also called Videha because I think left his body, like somebody who has so Vaidehi name comes from because she was daughter of the Videha, another name for Janak, and because he was like some kind of a spiritual king because he would rule without his like deha or body, and like some spiritual thing about this.
Okay. Okay. I will pass you on that to Anindita.
So I will go with Vibhandu's first guest. All are named after Sita. So Janki, Maithili, then Vaidehi and all. Videha was the kingdom which Mithila was the capital of, and Sita was the princess of Videha. That's why Vaidehi.
Okay.
So,
okay. That's what he said as well, but we were looking for something a little different. Okay, let's see. Passing you on to JK.
Okay, I'll say these are all various names of various oppressed versions of Sita. So,
okay.
And Vaidehi is something to do with feet. She's some name because she was as in various parts of the body, and this is Vaidehi represents feet.
Feet. Okay. No. Passing you to Karthik.
So yeah, the first one is I think is answered. That is the connection among the names is all the women were named after Sita, right? The different names of Sita. Vaidehi is something I think someone who takes who's been through some kind of trouble or I think some kind of trouble or been through the fire, something like that. Yeah,
been through the fire. Okay, Preetham.
So I'll say names of Sita and Vaidehi, basically someone who emerges from the ground, sort of a thing.
Okay.
As in because
Go on.
she was found in a fallow field. Sita was found in a fallow field as a baby, and
Okay, I'll give that to you because that's kind of what we were looking for. Vaidehi means furrow, right? Indicating the fact that Sita was discovered in a field. So that's what the word Vaidehi means. And the names, of course, are all a hat tip to Sita, like Vibhendu said. Maithili, Vaidehi, Janaki, and Ram Dulari. But the fact that she was discovered in a field and furrow is what we were looking for. So 5 points to Vibhendu and the full 10 points to Preetham on this. Next question to Prithvish. Journalist Tony Joseph, in his book Early Indians, made the case that the work Z post-dated the Harappans in this fashion. The problem of the X is this: the X is rarely to be found in the Harappan civilization, neither as skeletal remains nor as images, while it's very prominent and ubiquitous in the Z. In a hymn, a river is described as created vast for victory like a chariot. He just gives this as an example. So what is this X that he's talking about, and in which work Z is it ubiquitous? And therefore, using this, he basically says that the Z must have been written after the Harappan times.
So it's my question.
Yes.
So for Z, I'll guess it's the Vedas. The Vedic hymns had a mention of one animal, which, for lack of a better guess, I'll say horses.
Horses. And for the second part, do you want to be a little specific?
Rig Veda
is the right answer. Take your 10 points. And your punt on horses came correct. It is horses. And the Rig Veda has several descriptions of horses and chariots and so on. And Tony Joseph posits that the Harappans did not have any mention of horses, either through images or through any of the works of that time to establish that horses were there. Okay, well done, Prithvish. 10 points to you. Question to Sachin. In 1984, she did a tiny film called Abodh, which sank without a trace. X, recognizing a potential, shot a quick showreel with her and sent it to 8 producers with the note, "I'm signing this girl, and if you want to sign her, send me a check for 5,000 rupees. By the end of the week, he had 8 checks, after which he took out an advertisement. The impact was tremendous. 6 pages in this magazine when nobody had even heard of her. The ad's final page had the names of the producers, making her an immediate sensation. Which actress was this? Who was the director? And in which now defunct magazine did he take out the ad in?" So 3 points for the actress, 3 points for the director, and 4 points for naming the magazine. Question is with Sachin.
One more movie question.
Luck of the draw.
So I think so. The actress I think is Madhuri Dixit.
All right.
Who did Abodh. Now the other 2 parts are in new territory. Director, I'll say, for a lack of a better guess, I know there's something on this is Kashinath, who did some. There was some story which I read, and for magazine, I'll say it is Cine Blitz or Blitz.
Cine Blitz. Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, I will pass you on that to Ingit.
This is Madhuri Dixit, Subhash Ghai, and movie.
Movie. Okay. Passing you to Vibhendu.
Madhuri Dixit, Subhash Ghai, Screen.
That is the right answer, Vibhendu, as expected. Madhuri Dixit, Subhash Ghai, and Screen magazine.
Hey, Screen is defunct, is it?
Yeah.
Oh damn! My wife's first gig was at Screen.
I kind of thought that you would get Screen, yeah, because of.
Yeah, I didn't know it was. I didn't know it was defunct. Damn it.
Yeah, 2015, I think it shut. Yeah. So 3 points to Sachin, 3 points to Ingit, and the full 10 points to Vibhendu. Okay. So Sachin got the part that he thought was most important, which is Madhuri Dixit. Who cares about Subhash Ghai and Screen and all of those. Well done. Okay, question to Anindita. The provenance of this artifact made of ivory indicates that Syed Mubarak Ali Khan, otherwise known as Nazim Humayun Jah, gave it to King William IV in 1836. It's the model of a structure with a numerical name thanks to a kind of architectural illusion. So tell me, what is it a model of? It's the model of a palace. Tell me what's the name of the palace. The mansion has now been converted into a museum and it displays someone's prized possessions, firmans, and so on. It also has the weapons that were used in a memorable encounter or battle. So whose possessions can be found here today and which encounter or battle? Here is the ivory replica, right? So this ivory replica was apparently given to the monarch and he was very thrilled when he got it. So what
Can you
is
go back to the question
yeah.
once?
What is it a model of? It has a kind of numerical name. It has a name in.
So I would say the model of Hajar Duari.
Okay.
Possessions would be since it's Jah, Humayun Jah. So I would say possessions would be of Sirajud-Dowla, and
Okay.
the encounter would be the Battle of Palasi.
Brilliant. I mean, it's absolutely perfect answer. Hazardawari Palace or Bada Koti as it was called, Sirajud-Dowla and the Battle of Plassey. Perfectly answered. Full
So
10
my
points.
state finally.
Yes. Well done. Perfectly cracked. Went to the right person and well answered. 10 points to you. Question now to Jayakanthan. Originally, they were brought from Zanzibar to Bombay and then later exported to Southeast Asia. This turned out to be a flourishing business for Indian middlemen. However, soon a direct shipping line opened between these two places, which is Zanzibar and locations in Southeast Asia, thanks to the increasing popularity of a product in the East. So what is this commodity? And we've given you a picture as well, so it's a very obvious guess. The popularity of what product prompted this change of doing, demand became so much that they decided to then do a direct shipping line to Zanzibar. I don't want any specific brand name for the second part. You can just tell me what type of product.
So if we think it's water, we don't need to say Bisleri. Water is enough.
Correct.
Okay, so you're saying that this commodity is shipped from Zanzibar to Bombay and now it's directly exported to Southeast Asia.
Yeah, I mean, then it kind of, originally it was shipped from Zanzibar to Bombay and then from Bombay it was reshipped to Southeast Asia. As the product kept moving into Southeast Asia, as the commodity moved into Southeast Asia, a product was made with this commodity, which became very popular. Okay. So they then decided to just cut out the middleman and ship it directly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So I'm guessing this is a kind of a spice, something like the clove.
Okay.
Right. And the popularity is the Gudangaram cigarettes, the clove cigarettes, which people start smoking in Indonesian places.
Perfect answer, JK. Absolutely right. Kratek cigarettes or club cigarettes, as like Gudangaram, like he said, those the ones that make those crackling sound and give out the distinct aroma of clove. So these were cloves. Cloves were a huge kind of source of revenue for Indian middlemen, businessmen for a long time, till directly started getting shipped to locations like Indonesia. Great answer. Well cracked by Jayakanthan, 10 points. Question now to Karthik. The year was 1978 and the month of January to be exact. A 21-year-old Shobha Munkur was on a train with her colleagues. They were on their way to Patna to take part in something. They were all hunched up in a third-class compartment with unreserved tickets. She says that she was offered a place to sit because of what she was carrying. She was a quiet introvert. That is the reason why she says she was entrusted with the task of safekeeping the objects. The organizers or whoever knew that she would not fiddle with it too much. What exactly was she carrying? And I would say this entire thing, this 1978 thing, is something forgotten or lesser known.
January to be exact.
So January 1978, what was she carrying?
1978, is it?
Yeah.
Month of January.
Make a guess, Karthik.
I don't know. I mean, probably a bottle. I mean, some carton of voters that I know that ink they use for elections or something. I'm just making
Election
a guess.
ink. Okay,
Yeah,
nice guess. Not indelible ink used for elections.
Yeah.
Preetham?
So India hosted a Women's Cricket World Cup then. So maybe the trophy for it?
The trophy for the Women's Cricket World Cup is the absolutely correct answer. Well cracked by Preetham. Well done. So what most people don't know is that, India hosted the second edition of the Women's Cricket World Cup 9 years, almost a decade before we hosted the Men's Cricket World Cup, right? Matches, in fact, happened in all kinds of locations, Patna, Jamshedpur, Hyderabad, and so on. Like the article from which the story was taken said, tongue-in-cheek, this is the closest that the Indian women's cricket team got to keeping the Women's Cricket World Cup trophy. But I'm sure that will change soon. Well cracked by Preetham. Well worked out amidst all of that obfuscation we tried to do.
Preetham's also a sports god now, isn't
it? Preetham, needless to ask, is god of all things small and big. Okay. Question goes to others who claim similar titles, one of them being Prithvish. Here we go. Okay, Prithvish, non-sports question for you. He came from a wealthy family from Essex. A prodigy, he completed his matriculation at the age of 12. He was quickly entrusted with important missions. The first of them took him to the Americas, but was a complete failure expectedly. He then went east with much more success. Who's this person? What was he doing in the Americas? What was his kind of mandate in the Americas?
Very bad guess, but I'll say that he was in the Americas to suppress the American struggle for independence, or he was basically deputed there to fight Washington.
Fight Washington, all right. And who's this?
If that be the case, I can't fit a India Connect. I'll hedge and say this is some photo of Clive.
Some photo of Clive. Okay. All right. Let's pass you on to Sachin.
Guessing this is the guy. He was sent to measure America. So he failed measuring mapping America. So I'm guessing this would be the same guy who did it here. So Lambton, and he did the trigonometric.
Lambton and the trigonometric survey. Okay. Not Lambton. Ingit?
This is the other Wellesley brother.
Okay.
He was there in the War of Independence, and he fought. He lost there. He came to India and did great stuff.
Right.
Including beating Tipu and becoming Governor General and shit.
Got it. Not that. I was waiting that somebody would say that once. Pause. Get everybody on that track. Okay. Libs.
So I'd say we'll go with Sachin's guess, which is he was in America for the trigonometric survey of America.
Okay.
And it is George Everest.
George Everest. Okay. No, not quite. Ani?
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So I would say basically this is I think the guy who founded the Harappa Valley civilization or Indus Valley civilization.
Okay.
And his name would be Richard Burton.
Okay, Richard Burton. Okay, and for the second part?
He was basically he was figuring out the Mayan civilization, Inca civilizations there.
Okay, so civilizational discoveries. Okay. JK?
Okay, these are the people who are sent as envoys to various countries to establish relationships. I think this was the guy who was sent to the Americas. I think he couldn't make contact with the native like the Spanish conquistadors. This guy was also sent there.
Okay.
He couldn't make any contact there, but I think he met the Mughal emperor and established a factory where they established the East India Company and all that, right?
Okay.
The guy, I think, and
what's his name?
Roe.
Okay. Okay. I will pass you on to Karthik.
No idea. I think I was going to think Thomas Rowe, but then I'm not sure about that. Maybe he probably went to Americas to see if he could get tea or something. But no, that won't be. That will be too early.
See, he could what?
No, maybe to see if he could. No, I don't think so. No, sorry. Pass, Venki. Don't
Okay,
have
passing to Preetham.
Sorry, I missed a couple of guesses. Could you tell what JK said?
JK said Roe, and he came to India, met the Mughal emperor, set up a factory and the East India Company and so on. And he tried to do similar, like what the conquistadors tried to do. He tried to establish contact with the native rulers and so on in the Americas and failed at it. That's what JK said. Karthik also said Thomas Roe, but didn't have any guess for the second part. Now it's over to you. Anidita said Richard Burton and Civilizational Discoveries.
I'll say this is Princep, and maybe was trying to decipher the American Indian languages out there.
Okay.
Work on a script for them.
Nice guess. Not Princep and deciphering American Indian languages. Prithvish, it was your direct, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll give 5 points to JK. This is indeed Sir Thomas Roe. That is the right answer. While he was sent to establish contact, etc., very specifically, he was sent to actually try and find the mythical city of El Dorado, right? So that was a specific task with which he was sent to the Americas along the Amazon to try and find El Dorado, which of course he failed at. But then, like JK perfectly said, he of course came to India, met the Mughal emperor, got very pally with Jahangir and so on, and kind of got permissions to set up a factory and pretty much kind of kicked off the East India Company's rule in India. So well done. That's 5 points to Jayakanthan on that. Question back to Karthik now. Okay. The Paris Surrealists had a game where one person draws part of a body, folds the paper and passes it on so that when unfolded, it reveals one stitched together creature. This is the inspiration for the title of a 2019 novel by an Indian writer, where she interweaves a fictional tale with her own personal experiences and memories. Name the work and the author. I'll show you her picture. And what is the technique used in the work? So this is the author.
Oh, shit. Can you just show the picture again, please?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
This is a South Indian author. Yeah, he's there in the name. I've forgotten. Sorry, the name's at the tip of my tongue. I've just forgotten that.
You want to make a guess on the title of the work or the technique?
No, even that is not. That is sorry. That's sorry. I'm just at the tip of my tongue. I'm sorry. I'm just not able to get it. I know that. No, technique is something like not al fresco. The author is sorry, Venki, I'll have to pass this.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Okay, Preetham.
I'll say the author is Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni.
Okay, Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni.
The technique I'll say is I know it's called like the blind man and the elephant. That's or something.
The blind man and the elephant type thing. No? Okay. Passing you to. Oh, okay. You want to take a shot on the work?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Passing you to Prithvish.
Again, very bad answers, but for the technique, I'll guess pastiche.
Okay.
It's a take of a famous novel. Okay, for the author, I'll construct something and say Subramaniam.
Okay.
And, a famous tale interwoven with her personal experience would be.
No, there is no famous tale. It's just a fictional tale interwoven with her own personal experiences. That's all.
My experiments with truth.
My experiments in truth. Okay. We'll pass you on to Sachin.
No, don't really know the author. I'm guessing the work is something like cross stitch, like how you would do one on the other, one intervened with the other.
In what way was that done in the book? Just explain.
As in the sense that probably like one chapter is fictional tale and the other is hers, and
so alternating chapters with fictional tales and her own tales.
Yeah,
that's the type of guess I wanted. Okay. Passing you to
work and author. No idea. Pass. I'll have to pass.
Okay. Passing you to Ingit.
Pass.
Oh, okay. Vibhendu. Surprise, nobody's guessed the author yet. Okay. Vibs, unmute, please. Unmute, please. You're on mute. Yes, please. Please unmute and answer.
Yeah, sorry. The author is Meena Kandaswamy.
Yes.
The novel I'll say is Prestige. And I'll say also, sorry, the novel I'll call it Memory Palace, and the technique used is tracing.
Tracing. Okay. What do you mean by tracing?
As in, like they would basically outline parts, somebody else will do the rest. And so on.
Oh, okay. Okay. Like that. Okay. All right. I will pass you on to Anindita.
So is the author someone called Meena Kandaswamy or something? She wrote a book, exquisite. Wait, I'll tell you. It's called Exquisite Cadavers or something. It's about, and I can't remember the technique. It's also exquisite something like.
Okay. And what is the technique used?
That's even the technique is called exquisite something.
No, I don't want any technical name. Just describe it.
Okay, so basically so there's a dead body kind of a thing, and there are like dabs and splashes of some colors and stitches across and something like that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll pass you on to JK.
This is the Dalit writer Meena Kandaswamy, like Vibhendu said. The Paris Surrealist game is Exquisite Corpse is what the game is called.
Okay.
I'm assuming the work is also something similar, like it could either be Exquisite Corpse, Exquisite Cadaver, as the previous guess was.
Okay.
All those names.
Yeah.
And technique is basically it's some kind of a generated fiction where you each one piece is like sort of constructed together and put together like a Frankenstein monster, right?
Okay. Just explain that a little bit better, please.
It's some kind of a thing like cut-up fiction where you take a particular piece of existing fiction, then and then add your own thing to it, like some kind of an embellishment. You sort of take a particular piece from another work, put it together, and sort of reorganize it, like how you would assemble a Frankenstein monster, right? Something like that.
I'll give it to you. I think that's good enough of an explanation. You specifically said you take a piece and add your own thing to it and embellish it. That's exactly what it is. This is Meena Kandaswamy's Exquisite Cadavers, right? So in each page, it's like also, what's called margin writing in some sense. So in each page, while the story plot is going on, she also keeps embellishing it with her own experiences and memories as a separate kind of parallel piece that she keeps writing. And the two things kind of come to a kind of collision at the end and get resolved at the end and so on. So nicely done. 3 points to Vibhendu for saying Meena Kandaswamy. 3 points to Anindita for saying Exquisite Cadavers. And the full 10 points to JK for giving the complete answer. All right. Last question of this round comes to Karthik. Classical blank emerged as a literary language with the epic poem Kadam Rao Padam Rao, written by the poet Fakhruddin Nizami in the late 15th century at Bidar, the capital of the Bahmani Sultanate, as well as in the verses of numerous local Sufis. Its early form is believed to have been transplanted to the Deccan in the early 14th century, thanks to an event that is among the most curious and controversial in Indian history. What's the blank? And what is this event that we're talking about, which kind of transplanted this to the Deccan? The event is a very puzzling, curious, and controversial event.
Early 14th century, right? Okay.
Yeah, correct.
See, if you say the early 14th century is probably this is the movement of the capital from Delhi to Daulatabad.
All right.
Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Okay. And if you say classical dash, it's a language is probably
need a language name there.
Classical literary language is epic poem Kadam Nizami, the Bidar. I mean, just as hazarding a guess, this is probably the dialect which we call as Dakhani or something.
Perfect. Well done, Karthik. Great answer. Dakhani is correct. Wonderful answer there. Dakhani, and it moved to the Deccan with the 1327 Muhammad bin Tughlaq's move to move the capital of the Delhi Sultanate from Delhi to Daulatabad. Great answer. Well cracked.
Thank you.
Nicely done. We go to one more written round now. This is the written round on books. It's called Bookish Knowledge. Okay, here we go. No negatives. Identify the photographer. Famous photograph of Nehru, the Mountbattens. Identify the photographer. What is the title of the 2007 book on whose cover this photo featured? The book was subtitled The Secret History of the End of an Empire. So need the photographer, surname will do. Need the title of the book. 2-word title. Yeah. Getting a bit of feedback from somebody's machines. We can just mute, please. Thank you. Okay, shall I move to the next one? There is question number 2. This is photojournalist T.S. Satyan talking about one of his assignments in his hometown of Mysuru. I photographed him at work with members of his family, listening to his daughter Hema playing on the veena, and more importantly, playing cricket with his nephews Tumbi and Nokki and niece Shanta. This last photo of this person playing cricket with his nephews and niece featured on the cover of a 2002 book by a famous Bangalorean. Which book? And who was this person who was shown playing cricket? So the original photo was by photojournalist T.S. Satyan. The photo was taken in Mysore. It should help you narrow down the second part on who it was. And the fact that it was a photo of him playing cricket with his nephews and niece should help you get to the first part. Which book is it?
Book, right?
2002 book. Yeah, correct. 2002 book. Third question. This is from the publicity material for the book Room 000. A serial killer is on the loose. In Room 000, a detective struggled to snare the culprit, but this murderer is always one step ahead of them. What is the book based on? Or who is the quote-unquote serial killer mentioned in this book? The author These are pediatric surgeons. Name the authors. It's actually two people writing under one common name. You can either give us that common name that they write under, or if you know their individual names, that's also fine.
What is cool.
When you say, okay, one step ahead of him. Okay. No issues.
So what is the book based on? Be a little specific if you can.
You want qualifiers and all, or?
Ideally, but okay, we'll be liberal since it's only for 3 points. I know you might not want to risk putting the qualifier.
You want a year or something in
That's
this?
what he was asking. So it's fine. It's okay. If you don't give the year, it's fine. If you can, please do. But I know you might be slightly unsure. If that's the case, then no problem. Okay. Last question of the set. A port city in Thane district that gives its name to a type of clothing or attire. The location where the ring of fire is present from a cricketing perspective. Please take these two together. A South Mumbai neighborhood that has the famous Magen David Synagogue. A city known as Krungtep in its native language. Please take these two together and give me two book names from the above clues. The first two clues forming the title of one book name. The second set of clues forming the title of the second book name. And give the name of the author of both the books. Okay, terrific. All right, let's go. Who wants to guess?
Is this Humay Vairawala and Indian Summer?
Not Humay Vairawala.
Cartier Bresson and Indian Summer.
Oh, Bresson.
Cartier Bresson and Indian Summer is correct.
Indian
Alexandre Tunzelmann's Indian Summer and Cartier Bresson. So just Bresson is fine, Cartier Bresson is fine, and Indian Summer specifically.
So again, 3 for each part, right?
Yeah, 3 each. Okay. Who's
a
this?
corner of a foreign field and Balu.
R.K. Narayan and
R.K. Narayan and a corner of a foreign field. That's correct. That guy keeping wickets in this book cover is R.K. Narayan. So a corner of a foreign field, but if you have just written corner of a foreign field, that's fine. By Ramchandra Guha and R.K. Narayan.
Kalpish Ratna and
Kalpish Ratna.
Bombay Plague.
Bombay Plague is fine.
Oh.
Bombay Plague of 1896 of the 1890s and Kalpish Ratna, Kalpana Swaminathan and Ishrat Syed. But if you just say Kalpish Ratna, that's good enough. And Bombay Plague.
Dongri to Dubai.
Baikula to Bangkok, Dongri to Dubai, Hussain Zaidi.
Hussain Zaidi, as simple as that. Dongri to Dubai, Baikula to Bangkok, Hussain Zaidi. Okay. So we go anti-clockwise now. We start with Vibhendu. Vibhendu, this is your question. Earlier in 2020, this man's statue in the British Foreign Office faced calls to be taken down. One of the supporters of this action wrote an article in The Guardian explaining how problematic a figure he was. When he died by his own hand in 1774, he was widely reviled as one of the most hated men in England. His body was buried in a secret nighttime ceremony in an unmarked grave without a plaque. A satire was published in London lampooning him as Lord Dash, an unstable imperial harpy. Who was this? Fill in the blank or tell me what nickname was he given and who wrote this particular article in The Guardian. Here is a picture. Vibhendu, your question.
Yeah, so I'll say.
Wow, you're nice and clear without any echo, everything. Very good.
Yeah, because my phone died down and I finally could figure out how to revive the microphone.
Excellent. Please go ahead.
Okay, so this is Clive.
Okay.
And what nickname he was given was it was called Lord Clove. And who wrote the article? I'll say Pankaj Mishra.
Pankaj Mishra. So Clive, Lord Clove and Pankaj Mishra. Passing you on to Ingit.
Clive is the Who. Shashi Tharoor wrote the article.
Okay.
The name was Lord Humpty.
Lord Humpty. All right. Sachin?
So the other will do well. So I'm guessing this is okay. Just take another guess anyway. So this is Warren Hastings.
Okay.
And Lord Wasting instead of Hastings, because, and then for the article I will guess this is Shashi Tharoor.
Shashi Tharoor. Okay. Prithvish?
I'll guess that's Clive. Guardian article. I'll stick with Shashi Tharoor.
Okay.
Or the nickname of Clive rhymes with Clive. Lord doesn't make sense. Can't think of a Lord Slime.
Lord Slime. Okay. Passing you to Preetham.
Did you say that the nickname rhymed?
No, I didn't say that. Prithvish made that up all on his own. I didn't say that at all.
So who I'll say this is Clive.
Yeah.
He was known as he was derogatorily called Nabob because of the riches he made in Bengal and so on.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll say who is I'll say Dalrymple because of the anarchy and
okay. All right. Karthik?
Yeah, so I'll go with Robert. Is this Robert Clive?
Okay.
I think his nickname at this particular point was, I think, Lord Opium or something, because
Lord Opium. Okay.
Lord Opium. And the article would have been Shashi Tharoor.
Shashi Tharoor. Okay. Jaykantan?
Okay, I'll say Lord Clive and Lord Cloven, like the devil is called the cloven foot and all that. So I'll say Lord Cloven for the blank.
Lord Cloven.
And, article is Shashi Tharoor.
Shashi Tharoor. Okay. Anindita?
I will say this is Lord Clive, Lord Vulture, because, dead and everything, and then body was buried. And he was, I remember, it was called Vulture and all because he was like, trodding on the dead.
Okay.
And this is written by William Dalrymple.
Perfect answer. Take your 10 points. Absolutely right. Perfectly done. Robert Clive, he was called Lord Vulture because he was like a vicious asset stripper, used to go and like kind of literally prey on the people. It also said Imperial Harpy over there. That could have been a clue for you to kind of get to like Vulture. And William Dalrymple, Anarchy came out recently and so on, as Preetham pointed out. So 3 points each to Preetham and Vibhendu, but the full 10 points to Anindita for closing the answer out on Robert Clive, Vulture and William Dalrymple. Okay. Question back to Vibhendu. These were introduced to curb the widespread gold smuggling and counterfeiting that happened in the region. In 1957, 8 denominations ranging from 10,000 to 1 were introduced. The only notable differences from the native ones were a special alphabet Z and the coloring. However, in 1996, events forced the people using these to shift to their own local ones, which had to be newly made. What are we talking about? And what unexpected event happened in 1966?
So, I'll say this is the Emirati rupee.
Okay.
And what unexpected event happened in 1966 was that basically Dubai was like...
No, one sec. I just clarify. The 1966 event happened in India. Okay.
So 1966 was the decimalization of the rupee. So then
decimalization. Okay. So Emirati rupee and decimalization. Passing you on to Ingit.
This is Gulf rupee,
Okay.
and the unexpected event is some nationalization of some bank.
Nationalization of bank. Okay. It was a little later, I think. Sachin?
Okay, so these were Gulf rupees, or what you could use in the Gulf. And 1966 event in India, is that I'm guessing there was some demonetization which happened then. The 10,000 ones were taken out in some time at that time, so that they had to do again.
Okay. Okay. Passing you to Prithvish.
Not even that. So first part is Gulf rupee, or Indian printed notes being circulated in the Gulf region. 66 event. Expected event. 66. So, the currency printing system went or a revamp in India. So
the printing system did not go for a revamp. Okay, nice guess. Preetham?
I guess is gone. So I'll say Gulf rupee for the first part. I'll say event in 1966 being that the then RBI or probably the Indian government, they said that they wouldn't they would de-recognize the Gulf rupee, and not claim it as the equivalent of an Indian rupee.
Of the Indian rupee. Okay. Passing you to Karthik.
Yeah, this is I think the Gulf or the Emirati rupee. That is one. That's what we are talking about. The unexpected event would be probably the decision of the government to pull the 1,000 and the 1,000 rupee notes, like which were there in circulation in order to curb black money.
Demonetization type thing. Somebody already guessed that. JK?
This is the Gulf rupee, which the Gulf countries used to use as a currency in the Gulf region. And 1966, I'll say this is something to do with the tensions at the time, where after the post-war with Pakistan and everything, there was a blockade happening about taking Indian rupees to the Gulf and all that. Probably it was devalued, something like that. I don't know.
Okay. What's your final answer?
Something to do with regional tensions, devaluing the rupee being used there.
Devaluing the rupee is all I wanted. So famously on 6/6/1966, if you read Indian financial history, 6 June 1966, Indira Gandhi massively devalued the rupee by some 57% or something. So what was some 4.5 rupees to the dollar became 7.5 rupees to the dollar overnight. And so the Indian currency just completely lost its value. This was because not just the regional conflicts, etc. A lot of the accusation at that time was that India was in dire need of funding from the World Bank and from the US and so on. So she went through a massive devaluation exercise, and therefore the Gulf rupee also just kind of completely lost its value immediately. So they had to move to a independent currency after that. So it was a massive devaluation that India did in 1966. So it was not a demonetization or decimalization. It was the other D. It was devaluation. 5 points to Vibhendu for saying Emirati rupee. That's fine. Gulf rupee is what it was officially called, but he got the concept right. And JK gets the full 10. This previous question was answered by JK, and this question is to Anindita. Famously, he was known to behave like a woman. He would often dress like one and even observe 4 days of untouchability each month, as menstruating women do. A curious British resident who dared to ask him why he did this received a phlegmatic answer. When his prospective father-in-law heard these stories, he was worried, but he was quite assured of the man's virility, as he had a son who died from a previous marriage, and so the marriage went forward. Who's this person? And So this couple and the aftermath of their marriage is well known to us. So name both the person and his wife.
So I would say this couple is perhaps Rabindranath Tagore and Mrinalini Devi.
Okay, not Rabindranath Tagore and Mrinalini Devi. Passing you to Vibhendu.
This is Raja of Jhansi, of
Oh,
Rani of Jhansi.
And his name?
You want the name?
Yeah, ideally.
Yeah, what did he say?
So
He said Raja
Maharaja
of
of
Jhansi
Jhansi.
and Rani of Jhansi.
Gangadhar Rao.
That's good enough. Take it. Gangadhar Rao and Rani Lakshmi Bai, Rani of Jhansi. Then, of course, you know, he died and adopted a son, and then Doctrine of Lapse happened, and then the mutiny happened, and all of that.
Sadly,
Well done.
I watched the movie that's starring Kangana Ranaut because of the actor who played Gangadhar Rao, and I did not get it.
Okay, so that's 10 points to Vibhendu. Question to Ingit. Okay. This 2003 film, Bombay Bombay, saw the on-screen appearance of a character after nearly 25 years on big screen. According to the lead actor of the film, this was made possible only because a Hyderabadi took up the initiative. Who was the Hyderabadi who lends his name to something expansive? There is another Hyderabad connection that the lead character has, which is mentioned in the books and visible in the other films. What is this other Hyderabad connection?
Hyderabad is Muhammad Azharuddin.
Okay. Okay. Ingit, you guessing Muhammad Azharuddin for the first part, and the second part? I'll have to pass you if you don't have a guess.
He was a spy against the Razakars.
Spy against the Nizams. Okay. Passing to Sachin.
I'm guessing the Hyderabadi is Ramoji Rao, who was a Ramoji Film City. And Hyderabad connection, I'm guessing is like that. I don't know what this is about. So, but I'm getting the correction is he's one of those descendants of the last Nizam, like some of
Descendants of the last Nizam. Okay. All right. Prithvish.
So Ramoji Rao went and produced, like Ramoji Rao, the film city, and Feluda.
What did Ramoji Rao do with regard to this film?
I guess would have produced.
Okay, produced it. All right.
Feluda smokes the Charminar brand of cigarette.
That is correct. Which is made by
PST.
Wazir Sultan Tobacco, which is from Hyderabad, of course. So this is Ramoji Rao who produced the film. So after Satyajit Ray had made Jai Baba Felunath in 1979, while the TV series had come up till about 2003, nobody had made a Feluda film. And finally, according to what Sabyasachi says, our man Ramoji Rao came up and said, I will make a Feluda film, and Sandeep Ray made it. And that's how Bombay happened. And of course, Feluda smokes Charminar cigarettes. Well known. For those who know me well, this is almost literally an obligatory Feluda question that I put in every quiz that I conduct. So 5 points to Sachin and the full 10 points to Prithvish for Ramoji Rao and Feluda smoking Charminar cigarettes. Question to Preetham. A controversy arose in this organization owing to the increase in the use of one particular type of propaganda. One of the co-founders, the nephew of perhaps the most revered leader of his generation, complained about the prominence being given to a certain group of or a certain category of people. The leader himself dismissed this party as prostitute sons, a Malayali and Kuttadigal. Who is this leader? Which party was he talking about? Who was the Malayali he was specifically talking about? So the leader was, was not from, he was the most revered leader of that generation. He was dismissing this other party as made up of prostitute sons, a Malayali and some Kuttadigal. So who was this leader? Which party was he derisively talking about? Who was the Malayali he was specifically pointing out? And the general crib in that party among many people, including his this leader's nephew, who was one of the co-founders of the party, was that one particular type or group of people are getting undue attention and one specific type of propaganda is being used by this party. Okay, Preetham, go for it.
Say the Malayali is EMS Namboodiripad.
Okay.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'll say, so the party is talking about would be CPI.
Okay.
And I'll say the leader, oh shit.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll say the leader is I'll say the leader is Rajaji.
Rajaji. Okay. Moving on to Karthik.
Yeah, so I think the party that is being talked about is CPIM.
Okay.
And the Malayali, I think probably the Malayali is that is being talked about is most likely it is, if you look at it currently, it is Sitaram Yechury.
Okay.
Then if you take the leader, then the one of the co-founders, the nephew of Puff-Up's most, I don't know, maybe the leader might have been somebody like Jyoti Basu or somebody.
Jyoti Basu. Okay. Jyoti Basu, Sitaram Yechury, and CPI.
Yes, CPIM. Yeah.
CPIM. Okay. JK?
Hey, just a clarification. So the co-founder is a nephew of this party itself, is a nephew of leader, is it?
Nephew of a revered leader. That leader does not belong to this party. That leader was dismissing this party.
But the nephew is still the co-founder of this particular party.
Nephew is still the co-founder of this party. Correct.
See, the Malayali could be MGR. Basically, the form of propaganda is basically entertainment or films which are used by the Dravidian parties to promote their ideals.
Okay, which party are we talking about?
So MGR originally was in the DMK, right? So
DMK
could be the party that's being.
So who was the leader making the derisive comment?
The co-founder of this particular party is a revered leader, you're saying.
No. Ignore the co-founder, nephew, and all that. Just tell me who was the most revered leader of his generation who made this comment that is in quotes, which says dismissing this party as prostitutes and Malayali and Kuttadi.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just trying to eliminate some choices. You're saying the co-founder of this particular party, DMK itself, is a nephew of this guy.
Yes. I mean, he was just one of the co-founders. He was not the most prominent person.
Okay. I'll say Periyar for that.
That is good enough. Take your 10 points. Absolutely correct. This is Periyar dismissing the Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam, DMK. DMK had one of the co-founders of the DMK along with Annadurai was EVK Sampath, who was Periyar's nephew, right? And he kept complaining, saying all these film guys have come in, everything is happening only with cinema, and only the cinema guys are getting all the popularity and they are getting all the plum posts and so on. So Periyar apparently said the DMK is a party made of prostitute sons, MGR who's a Malayali, and a bunch of Kuttadigal who are essentially actors and things like that. Beautifully cracked. 10 points to JK. Nice answer. Absolutely correct. Anindita, you're back, right?
Yep.
Okay, all right. So next question to you, Anindita. Okay, this is one of my favorite questions. I set this question myself, so but it's easy. I'm sure you'll crack it. Which 1950 Indian song, you can either name the song of the film, was inspired by this 1945 hit which you will listen to? Who sang the female lead in this 1950 Indian song? This song also made a reappearance on the small screen in 2020 in a period drama. Where did it make a reappearance?
Chico, who's the toast of Puerto Rico, especially when it comes to making love. You'll be speaking speaking Puerto Rican, and your heart is sure to weaken when you meet the guy I'm speaking of. Chico, Chico, from Puerto Rico. Every chick in Puerto Rico chases Chico. Chico, Chico, from Puerto Rico. Oh, they all think Chico, Chico, pretty.
Yeah. So this was a 1945 English hit song, as you can listen to it. Tell me which 1950 song was inspired by the same. Who sang the female lead in the 1950 song? And where did the song maker, the 1950 song maker, reappearance?
So the song is Gore Gore Obake Chore.
Okay.
Female lead would be Lata Mangeshkar and Amir Bhai Karnataki.
Right.
I'll go with Lata Mangeshkar and Amir Bhai Karnataki song that sang that song.
I need
together.
one name who sang the female lead.
Lata Mangeshkar.
All right. And the third part?
Period drama in 2020. Period drama in 2020. I can't think of period dramas in 2020. Wait. Oh.
Yes, please.
Can't think. Sorry, pass.
Okay. Vivendu, take it away.
I'll say the
Yeah.
period drama is A Suitable Boy.
Okay.
BBC series.
Oh, yeah.
And Gore Gore and Lata.
Okay. And which movie is it?
Samadhi.
Yes, of course. Gore Gore Obake Chore from Samadhi.
Oh, I didn't watch Suitable
Starring,
Boy. I should have watched it. Shit.
And Lata
I'm yet to
Mangeshkar
watch it.
and A Suitable Boy. A beautifully visually rendered period drama, I must say. So full 6 points to Anindita and the full 10 points, of course, to Vendu.
Yet to watch this. I will watch this now.
Please put it on your list and watch it. Ingrid, question to you. Okay, Ingrid, appropriate question for you.
Hey, pressure. No pressure.
Here's a list. Chennai 1952, Delhi 1952, Mumbai 1955, Kanpur 1959, Blank 1971, Nagpur 1986, Delhi 1993, Ahmedabad 1996, Blank 2000, Bengaluru 2018. These are milestones for the Indian men's cricket team in tests over the years. It is an exhaustive list in a way. What is this list about? Name one of the locations, X or Y.
Okay, these are the venues of India's first test victories against each of the test playing nations.
All right.
2018 is where they beat Afghanistan after they were given test. Okay.
All right.
One of the locations.
Yeah, one of them will do. Yeah. Should ideally know both, but one will do.
Dhaka.
For which one?
71.
Dhaka for 71. Okay. Passing you to Sachin.
So this is a list of India's first test victories against each of the test playing nations that we have played against. Why is Dhaka?
Okay. And what is XXX?
XXX is it will be Port of Spain.
Is correct. That's the right answer. Okay. Don't know why Ingrid went with Dhaka for the first one.
Yeah.
I thought it was some twist. Pakistan, Dhaka.
No. The Pakistan win was there. So in order, it is England in 52, Pakistan 55, New Zealand 50. Pakistan 52, New Zealand 55, Kanpur 59. Of course, famously Australia. Port of Spain, West Indies, Nagpur, Sri Lanka, Delhi, Ahmedabad, Delhi against Zimbabwe, Ahmedabad against South Africa, Bangladesh in Dhaka, and Bengaluru, of course, Afghanistan. So that's 5 points to Ingrid and the full 10 points to Sachin. Question to Prithvish. The Arthashastra notes that it is better for a king to have several commanders overseeing his forces. The idea was to concentrate power in the hands of the king while dividing military power among several commanders. This may have been influenced by a real-life incident where a king ran into some trouble while reviewing his troops. Who rise to power is this a reference to? And which dynasty did that guy kind of supplant?
You want the dynasty he supplanted, right? And
For the second
also,
part, and I need a
Okay,
name for the first part.
Good.
Question to Prithvish.
So the dynasty supplanted by the Nandas.
Where's the
Nanda,
Nandas? Okay.
but that doesn't make sense. Rise to power is Chandragupta Maurya.
Chandragupta Maurya. All right. Passing you to Pritham.
So the real life inspiration is for the thing written in Arthashastra only, right? It's not
Yes,
like a later.
correct. Yeah, correct.
Then I'll say this is Seleucus Nicator, who ended up supplanting the Alexander's dynasty, the Macedons.
Okay. Not that. Passes to Karthik.
I know if you go back in further in history, probably you were talking about this one, the dynasty of this guy, this Ajat Shatru's dynasty. I don't know what that name is, and then supplanting the guys before it, I guess. I forgot that name.
Okay. We'll pass you on to JK.
Okay, I'll say Ajatashatru and the Nandas.
Okay. Passing you on to Ani.
So this is the reference of like Ajatashatru like, he supplanted the Nandas and or
Yeah, that's
no. So this is the rise of Ajatashatru, and the dynasty that he did was Mauryas or something.
Was Mauryas. Okay. Vibhendu.
I'll say Pushyamitra and Mauryas.
That's the right answer, Vibhendu. This is Pushyamitra Shunga.
Shunga dynasty.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
God.
killed the last Mauryan emperor Brihadrata Maurya when he was the commander of his troops, and while he was reviewing the troops, finished off the emperor and took over power. And that's why then you say that okay, don't leave it to just one guy who will have all the power. Disperse it among multiple people. 5 points.
Arthashastra must be a later edition with added stuff.
Which is why I asked this, because I mean, he was along with Chandragupta, not the last time.
Yeah. 5 points to Anindita and 10 points to Vibhendu on that, 10 crucial points. 3 questions left in the quiz, I think, or maybe 4. Question to Ingit. 4 questions. Okay. Even though he lived near a mosque, he rarely visited it, being a man of bohemian tastes. Even today, locals seem uncomfortable with the fact. A man with good taste in alcohol, he is also believed to have frequented the Nautch girls of 19th century Delhi. When accosted by the British during the 1857 mutiny and asked if he was a Muslim, he famously replied that he was half Muslim, explaining that he drank wine but did not blank. Who is this who proclaimed himself to be half Muslim, and what made him a half Muslim?
Mirza Ghalib, and he didn't eat pork.
Perfect. 10 points. Absolutely right. Mirza Ghalib, his famous statement that he drank wine but didn't eat pork, which made him half a Muslim. Easy one. 10 points to Ingit. Question to Sachin. Following the Portuguese conquest of Goa, the colonial powers that be encouraged their culture onto the locals. Naturally, there was a pushback from the natives. To sabotage any attempts at reclaiming by the locals, one of the weirder things that the Portuguese did was to line local waterways with an object. A cow was killed and its blood poured into a lake as well. What did they do, and why exactly did they do this, or what were they attempting to prevent? So they placed an object along the local waterways, as well as kind of did stuff like pouring the blood of a cow into a lake and things like that.
Can you? Is there an image? There is an icon.
There is no. There is no. Is there an icon? Sorry, I think that's there by mistake. I don't think there's
Okay.
any.
Okay.
Here.
Okay. So they lined local waterways with an object.
Yeah. So tell me what object?
Okay. And what were they
attempting to prevent, or what were they? What was the whole idea?
Okay. Attempting to prevent. Okay. So. So I think they wanted to stop the practice of purity and impurity, like what some people would practice. So that's why they did all these things. As in, if the cow's blood is poured into the lake, the whole lake becomes impure, and you people, like especially upper caste, can't go and
so you can't do caste differentiated stuff.
Yeah, they can't go and purify themselves. That's what people would do. If you had an impurity, you go take a bath and come back, kind of a thing.
Okay.
So
and what was the object or whatever?
With the lined local waterways with an object. What else can they do? I'm guessing it would be some kind of a the culture. They would restrict these things with probably they would do that, and they would put some coffins or something like that.
Coffins. Okay. All right. I'll pass you on to Prithvish.
So I'll say probably they didn't want people to reconvert to or they imposed their religion, and they didn't want people to do the Hindu rituals and practices.
Okay.
And reconvert. So they dropped cow blood and all, because you can't get, say, the holy waters from the lakes or the rivers to.
And first part?
For the first part, I'll say that from the local temples and all, they got the idols out and lined the waterways, because you generally don't like. You have to step on it, or you have to.
Okay. Nice thinking. All right, Preetham.
Yes, second part, I'll stick with Sachin's guess that basically they didn't want Hindus, etc., to step into the water to perform any rituals or anything of that sort. And the first part, since you said they're imposing their culture.
By the way, not Sachin's guess, but so please tell me what you are saying for the second part clearly, so there is no confusion.
So second part, I'll say basically they weren't allowing Hindus to. So they didn't want Hindus to get into the water to perform any rituals of sort.
Okay.
Right, their prayers, ablutions, all of that. Okay. And for the first part, I'll say, since they're imposing their culture, I'll say these are Christian crosses or
that's good.
crucifix.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. Prithvish gave me the perfect explanation for the second part. They didn't want, like, Hindu reconversion, Garvapsi type things happening, right? So there was a lot of conversion that had happened into Christianity. They didn't want these guys to convert back into Hinduism as a protest against the Portuguese, and therefore water for ablution, for the holy water, everything that Prithvish said, except that they planted crosses, not idols.
I had to pick one between cross and Hindu idols.
Yeah, tough luck.
Unlike the Goans, I made the other choice.
Yeah. But perfectly worked out. Well done. 5 points to Prithvish and the full 10 points to Preetham for sticking to his cross and answering that. Well done. Okay, 2 questions to go. Penultimate question of Chai Latte Open Finals goes to Karthik. This painting was done over a 5-month period in 1981. It's titled You Can't Please All. So just tell us what is the source of this title, or explain the story in the picture, or tell us the source of that story or the title. That's good enough. The artist who painted this trained as an accountant before settling in and studying painting in an Indian city. In which Indian city?
1981. You Can't Please All. Where do we get this title from? Okay, I'm just going to make a guess. Is the artist MF Hussain?
Okay.
And I know you can't. I mean, okay. You Can't Please All. Okay, the title is. I mean, it looks like. Yeah. Okay. So the title. Sorry. It's okay. Probably the story is something that he's looking out, and rather he's just when he sees out of whatever place he is booked and all, he sees maybe he sees that all the slums in that area. That's the idea. That's the understanding.
Okay, that's the rough picture.
Yeah,
and in which city is this?
This is probably in Mumbai.
Mumbai. Okay. Passing you on to JK.
You're saying this. He started out only in 1981. Is that what you said?
No. This work is from 1981. I am not saying when he started out.
Okay. It's something to do with basically Indian proverbs kind of depictions are there that you can see something like the Panchatantra or the Jataka tale, some kind of Indian traditional thing is what this thing is.
Okay. And second part?
Second part, I'll say Bangalore.
Bangalore. All right. We'll pass to Anindita.
I'll say this is Bhupen Thakur's painting. So this will be Baroda, the city is Baroda. And we get the title from Aesop Fables or Aesop Tales.
From what? Sorry?
Aesop Fables or Aesop.
Perfect answer. Absolutely right. Aesop's Fables. That's the right answer. And this is indeed Bhupen Thakur. So this is in Baroda. Right. So this is the story of a father and son taking the donkey to the market. And then, many people keep asking, why are neither of you riding the donkey? And then when the older man puts his son on the donkey, the others ask him why the younger boy is riding the donkey when the old father is walking. So basically, whatever you do, you can't please everyone. That comes from, JK was on the right track, but it comes from an Aesop fable tale. And this is painted by Bhupen Thakur. And he was, for most of his life and career, based in Baroda or Vadodara. Well done. Good answer, Ani. 10 points to you. With that, we come to the last question of the quiz. I hope all of you had fun and enjoyed it. The team at Nexus thoroughly enjoyed putting this quiz together for you. Hope that was good and great show by everyone. And thank you so much for taking part and playing fair and having fun in this quiz. Last question of the quiz goes to Vibhendu. The train left Delhi at 6:30 a.m. on Feb 11th and reached Allahabad the next day at 9 a.m. Special care was taken in the running of the train. A special marking was made on each of the platforms of the stations where it stopped to ensure that the all-important central bogie was aligned to the main entrance of each station. Additionally, everyone who traveled on the train was asked to carry their own food, and all the foodstuffs vendors were asked to stay away from the platforms to avoid crowding and to enable something. What were all these arrangements for, and why were the food vendors made to stay away?
You're not saying which year, right?
Of course, I'm not saying. If I say which year, there is nothing left in the question.
So I'll say since Gandhi died in late January, and this happened in Feb 11.
Okay.
So these are Gandhi's remains or
Okay.
ashes being taken to Allahabad
Okay.
for immersion.
Okay. And why were the food vendors asked to stay away?
Food vendors were asked to stay away because
that second part is just a very logical type guess.
As in like because something gets mixed up, like pots and like somebody does not give away the ashes in like because they're using pots and pans, same stuff. So,
they're using pots and pans.
Some mix up.
Some mix up could happen. Okay, all right.
3 Idiots type.
Okay. Yeah, correct. 3 Idiots types. Okay. Ingrid? Unmute, I think Ingrid can't hear you.
The arrangements were for Gandhi's ashes to kind of be transported and be seen by people.
Yeah.
Food vendors would use coal and stuff like that. So they were worried that, people shouldn't mix this ash and that ash and do something.
Okay, mixture of ashes. All right. Passing it to Sachil, you are all going to kind of say, oh no, when the answer comes. It's a very, very simple thing for the second part.
Okay. So these were arrangements for Gandhi's ashes to be taken from Delhi to Allahabad, probably to be immersed. And the food vendors, why would they be meant to stay away?
To enable something.
Yeah, I think it's like, they wanted more people to view it at each stations, and these food vendors will roam around along the windows and everything.
Perfect answer. That's all I wanted. Absolutely correct. So that, these food vendors would keep roaming around near the windows of all the bogies and trying to sell their wares. And they wanted as much crowd as possible to get a glimpse of the Asti, which was in the central coach. And that's why the central bogie or central coach was aligned also to the entrance of the station and so on. Beautifully worked out by Vibhendu to figure out that it was indeed Gandhi's ashes, despite the year not being given. And good logical end to the quiz by Sachin. Full 10 points. So 5 points to Vibhendu and 10 points to Sachin. And as I can quickly see from my scores, I don't think we have any ties, but let's see. Let's see the final scores. In 8th place is Karthik with 29. Well done, Karthik. Some very nice answers. Thank you very much for being a part of this.
Last place.
Next is Venkat Raghavan. Venkat Ingit with 49. Good answers. Next is with that last ball hit is Sachin Talent Deshpande with 58. Done. In a tie for 4th place, we have Prithvish Datta from Bombay and Anindita Basu Roy from Noida, tied at 74 points. Right? But clearly, podium, very, very close among the top 3 in the podium, as is to be expected. These are all people who finished top in the prelims as well. So, no real surprise. In 3rd place today, a rare 3rd place finish because he usually wins most of his quizzes, is Preetham Upadhyay from Mangalore with 89 points. Well done.
The youngest of our lot.
Yes,
So-
of course. That has, that's neither here nor there, honestly. Our runner-up for today is, again, no stranger to podium finishes, whatever be the type of quiz, Gen quizzes, BIS quizzes, India quizzes, he's always out there. Jaykanthan R from Chennai is our runner-up with 91 points. But our clear winner for today, crossing a century and stamping his India God authority, is Vibhendu Tiwari from Bombay with 109 points. Let's do the tiebreaker. In the history of Test cricket, this has been done less than 30 times, including by Indians 4 times. The first was Pankaj Roy and Vinu Mankad during the legendary opening partnership of 4-1-3. Second instance was Gundappa Vishwanath and Yashpal Sharma versus England in 1982. In 2007, it was Tendulkar and another batsman versus Bangladesh. What are we talking about? And who's the other pair to have done this in a far more famous instance than the ones listed above? So 2 parts, 1 point for each part.
I'll ping Hatim.
Yeah, you ping Hatim.
Yeah, I have.
Okay. Anindita, you're going to WhatsApp me, right?
Yeah, I'll WhatsApp you.
And for the first part, I've written a generic descriptor if you want.
That's fine. Generic descriptor is what we want for the first part.
1 second.
Okay, since Prithvish, you've sent in your answer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Anindita, you can make a guess on the mic then, no problem.
Okay. So I would say this is like the Rahul Dravid and Virendra Sehwag opening, I think the opening scores, like opening pair having the highest score in opening scores or something.
Okay, okay. And Rahul Dravid and Virendra Sehwag is your guess for the second part.
Yeah.
Okay, tough luck. That's a good guess, but not correct. Prithvish, what was your guess?
So an entire day without getting dismissed in Dravid and Lakshman.
That is the right answer. Batting through an entire day without losing a wicket or getting dismissed.
Oh, nice.
And Dravid and Lakshman. This is Australia at Eden Gardens. Sorry, tough luck. So that resolves the tie. And Prithvish finishes at 75 to finish 4th. And a great show, Anindita finishes on 74 to finish 5th in the quiz. But well ahead of even of Sachin, who was in 5th place, so 6th place. So well done to all of you. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Vibhendu, JK, Pritam, Prithvish, top 4, as well as Anindita, Sachin, Karthik, and Ingit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes proceedings for the day.
Thank you, Venkat.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Venkat.
It was a very good quiz. Thanks.
Nice.
Thank you.